name is Matt Pardee. I'm a JavaScript developer. I'm a web developer from Cloud9 IDE, and I'm also their chief evangelist. And today I'm going to be talking about the next generation of web development and programming in general. So to get a survey of the audience, how many of you do programming or web development? Cool. Any of you not do that at all, or don't even want to touch it? Okay. The guy sitting next to you over there. All right, cool. Well, that's good. So most everybody here has a little bit of experience. So has anybody heard of Cloud9? Yeah, cool. All right, so for those of you who haven't, Cloud9 is a cloud-based development environment, and it enables you to hack on your code anytime and anywhere. What that really means is that traditionally you've done work on your desktop. This allows you to do work in your browser. It allows you to do programming in your browser. The closest analogy that I can come to explain that better is what Google did with Microsoft Word by putting it online and creating Google Docs is what we're doing with traditional programming development by putting it online. That's what we're calling Cloud9. So unfortunately, this is what development looks like today. This is the vast majority of what people who come out of college and high school and get into programming have to work with. This is called Eclipse. And the reason that this is unfortunate is because Eclipse is extremely slow. You have to spend so much money to make your computer capable of even handling it to do basic operations. You get this wonderful gray beige interface. And it's just awful. It's just awful to use. And the reason that it's so popular, though, is because it runs on every platform. The reason it runs on every platform is because it's built in Java. And Java is a technology that was pretty popular back in like 1993, and it hasn't really improved much since then. So yeah, it's pretty bad. So we wanted to, when we were creating Cloud9, we wanted to approach it from a completely different perspective. And of course, putting everything online is one thing, but making it beautiful is a completely another thing. So this is what Cloud9 looks like. And in some ways, it's got some similar components that you get from Eclipse, and a lot of other editors. But one big thing that you'll notice is that most of the space is taken up by the white space in the middle there, and that's the editor. And as a programmer, that's the most important part of what you're doing. That's the code that you're actually creating. So you really wanted to maximize the vertical and horizontal space. Even though you're running in the browser, which is about 5% of it or 10% of it is taken up by the bar at the top, we were able to maximize the space through the rest of the IDE. So why is Cloud9 important? Why am I up here? Why am I talking about it? And why do I think it's the future? Well, the first thing is, I'll just go over these briefly and I'll get into more detail in a little bit. The first thing is that it aligns with the way that you guys already work as developers. And what I mean by that is most of the things that you do are online, or you derive a lot of the tools that you use are online. Second thing is it breaks free from the shackles of the desktop. And the third is that it allows you to get your work done faster, and I'll show you how that works, and I'll demonstrate that later. Hopefully I'm fast enough we can go eat lunch early. Okay, so the first thing is workflow alignment. So this is what the typical developer's workflow looks like today. The area on the left there is where your code exists. And what a lot of developers are doing, what's very popular, is to put your code online. Why would you want to do that? Well, the reason you would want to do that is because it allows other people to collaborate on your code with you. Services like GitHub and Bitbucket, they give you functionality that allow you and other users to create issues about what's going on with the code if it's not working. Allows you to comment on the code, to see historical revisions of the code, do all kinds of really cool stuff that you can only do if your code is in one place. And when your code is up there, then you have to pull it down to your desktop. And you work on it on your desktop, and you do all your crazy hacking, and then you put it on your hosting server. And if you were the only person in the world who was ever working on your code, this would actually work pretty well. But in today's connected world, that's not the way it works. Sometimes what you do is a lot of developers have multiple computers. So even this is kind of manageable because you're only working on one computer at a time, or maybe there's only one other person in Hong Kong or something who's interested in what you're doing. So he's working on your code, but he's not really interfering with what you're doing. But then you get into a situation where you have maybe 4 or more people on your team who are working on the same code, and everybody's working from their own environment, and everything is all disconnected and crazy. And that's where this idea of Eclipse came into play, because Eclipse can run on just about any platform you throw at it. It can run on Windows, Linux, OS X, Solaris, and all these different platforms. And the reason they chose that is because it's the lowest common denominator. Everybody on your team, no matter where they're working from or what platform, they can use Eclipse. But like I said before, Eclipse is just pure crap. So this ends up being a really terrible situation where you have everybody working from different places, and they're all trying to get to the hosting server, they're all trying to get to the code repository, and this arrow in red represents the guy who overwrote your code and broke your website. So yeah, a lot of problems arise from doing it this way. So when we were building Cloud9 and putting it in the cloud, we wanted to completely eliminate all of these problems. And this is what workflow on Cloud9 looks like. So I'm going to show you a little demo. Okay. So how many of you have heard of GitHub or use GitHub? Yeah. So I'm going to go, and I guess first I should talk a little bit about, this is our dashboard. When you sign up for Cloud9, you get your account. You can, all the basic stuff that you would do with your account, you can associate it with your GitHub account. So if you have projects on GitHub, you can actually pull them in directly on your dashboard, which is really cool. And you can start projects and do all the things that you would normally do. One of the really cool things that we actually just did, I think yesterday, one of my colleagues did, is we created this extension in Chrome that allows you to click a button called Edit in Cloud9, and it installs it on every, like it injects it in every GitHub page. You can click that, and it'll pull that code directly into Cloud9, which is pretty freaking amazing, because if you know anything about how that has to happen on your desktop when you're trying to do that, it's like SSH keys and all this crazy nonsense. So, so yeah, within just a few seconds, we pulled all that code into Cloud9. I actually had deleted that project before, so I made sure that that reflected reality. And what you get here is, here we've got the whole interface. So we've already literally completed 2 steps of that workflow that I was just talking about. And okay, I'm going to go even geekier on you guys. How many of you have heard of or worked with Node.JS? All right, this is cool. Okay, so it's kind of hard to explain Node.js, but Node.js is just a programming language. It's JavaScript, and JavaScript is really immensely popular because it makes all of the services that you use online, all the websites, really interactive. Like Facebook wouldn't be Facebook if it didn't have JavaScript to rely on to make, you know, that stupid news ticker that they put up there, like lazy load and keep on loading new stuff that's happening. JavaScript it's really powerful language, and it makes the web what it is today. So somebody had the really brilliant idea to put this on this server. And I won't go into the technical reasons why this is really cool, but it's the entire reason that Cloud9 exists. It's the entire technology base for our backend. And so we feel that this is the future. JavaScript is a really big part of the future of development. And so what we did was, our original tagline was a JavaScript IDE for JavaScripters. And this is a representation of that. So this is like your colloquial, or not colloquial, but I forget the word, but this is like your prototypical application that you would create, which is a chat room. You know, whatever language you're creating, it's like a hello world app, and then the next step is to create a chat room. So this is what they did. The creator of Node.js did. He created a chat room. And so I'm going to go ahead and run the chat room. I'll show you what this looks like. So you can run code within Cloud9, test it out yourself on our service. I'll do that now. And boom, you have, so you imported it, you can run it right away, and you can start chatting with yourself, which I do quite often because I'm the only US guy and the rest of my team is in Amsterdam. So, if you guys should, if you have laptops, you should open it and get on the Wi-Fi, because I'm going to do something later that you can access. You can go to this site right now if you can read that. It's node_chat.mattpardee.c9.io. and you can access that, and I'll leave it open so you guys can chat. And completely ignore what I'm saying. But for now, just real quickly, I'm going to stop it and show you something else that we think is really cool. And that is, I've already got one set. So another thing that Cloud9 allows you to do is debug code. And what that means basically is it allows you to run the code, but if something's going wrong, you want to investigate what's going on, you can put this, what's called a breakpoint. And so I'm putting a breakpoint after when somebody joins the chat room. So if we load this up and enter our name, it'll stop at loading. And the reason that it stopped is because it's at the breakpoint. So now we can kind of step through the code. Oh, I don't think this loaded properly. We can kind of see, this shows us how we got to that point. We can kind of go through the functions to see, all the things that had to happen for us to get to this point where the user was joining. And we can see that all the different variables that are here in the list, we can see that the user's name was Matt, et cetera, et cetera. And we can kind of step through, and if there was a problem with our code, we'd be able to see what was going wrong. There's nothing wrong with the code, so I'm going to hit play. And then what you'll see is it loaded up again, so it keeps on running. So this is actually a pretty major accomplishment in the programming world. A lot of people didn't think that this was really possible, but we showed that even though you're running your entire development process in the browser, that you can still do all the things that you would do on the desktop. And I'm going to go back to, oh wait, I'm going to run this. So if you guys do want to access it, you can still get there. Okay, so this is a big part of being able to break free and align your workflow. We really wanted to make it so that you didn't lose anything from being on your desktop. And I want to emphasize right now that we're concentrating on JavaScript. We think it's the future, but of course in the future we're going to support many more languages like PHP and Ruby and all the things that you guys are used to. Okay, and the third thing that I wanted to talk about was work faster, which I think I'm breaking my own. Yeah, I'm going pretty fast here. Breaking my own record. So with working faster, one of the things, the third component of what I was talking about earlier is that not only can you very easily import your code and work on it in Cloud9, you can also do things like deploy it to your server. And what that really means is create the actual website that you wanted to create in the first place so the rest of the world can see your great work. One of the really cool things that we did is, how many of you have heard of WordPress or worked on a WordPress site yourself? Okay. WordPress is immensely popular because it makes blogging really, really easy. But one of my biggest frustrations with WordPress, because I worked on it for so many years, is it gives you this really terrible interface if you're a developer for editing files on their back end. And if you ever wanted to change a color or do anything like that, it was just awful. So what you typically ended up doing was going back to that earlier slide where you had your desktop or whatever connected to your server. You'd have to set up a connection to the WordPress site for whatever client you were working for, and then you would have to, if you were doing that on your desktop and you brought your laptop over to their house to work with them and you forgot the credentials, and it was just a mess. So what we actually did was we enabled that kind of connection called FTP on Cloud9 itself. So I'll show that to you guys. Hey, Mike Me. Whoever that is. Okay, so this is a site that we're actually working on called Node.JS, which will probably change, but it's a news site about Node.js news, and our designer never got to it, so it didn't look as pretty as Cloud9. But so what I'm showing you right here is pretty remarkable. This is connected to an FTP server in Amsterdam, all that information is being sent back to our servers in Virginia, and it's being channeled to my laptop. So it doesn't matter where you are, but the credentials are always the same. I could grab any other computer in this room, log into my Cloud9 account, and access this server and change something. So this loaded up and left off where which word I actually had selected and which line number I was on when I previously closed the editor. And I'm going to do something really stupid, which my boss would probably kill me for if he knew that I was doing it. But I'm going to change the background color of this header area to red. The server's in Amsterdam again, so take a second. But yeah, it's pretty remarkable. You no longer have to worry about doing all that awful interface with WordPress. So so that's just one little example. But let's take a.
Running also to your version control.
What's that?
Is it also backing it up to version control?
In this case, no, because it's connected directly to the FTP server. But that's something that we will work on. So we'll enable FTP for projects that are not just FTP projects. Yeah. And I'll actually show you right now that that is part of one of our processes for doing. I actually already imported this project. It's called Mario Kart. It was worked on by my colleague Mike DeBoer. And what you'll see here is different from the other interface is that there's this little button on the left here called Deploy. And what that allows you to do is it allows you to create a deployment target, basically a web server, for your application. And right now we support two different services. One is called Node.JS, and the other one is called Heroku. Node.JS costs money, and Heroku is free up to 250 megabytes or something like that. And so I've already created a deployment target, and I think that it's running, so I can actually click it. Yeah, so this is something that is persistent. Once you create a deployment target, it will actually run your application. This happens to be a multiplayer version of Mario Kart. But so down here we have something like, for instance, we have select a character. It's in all caps. If I didn't like that, I'm going to search. I'm going to search the product or the project for that text. There it is. So I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to change that to be lowercase. Now again, what I can actually do is I can test this locally on my own account, my own Cloud9 account. That's what's really great about Cloud9. You don't have to deploy it anywhere to test. You can test locally. But once you're sure that everything, it didn't show up that way because I haven't cleared my browser. But once you're sure that you like the changes that you made, yeah, so there's the lowercase characters and everything looks prettier and all that jazz. You can click this, or what you were referring to earlier about your repository data. You can say, updated the characters. And then click deploy. And it'll give you a little indicator that it's deploying to your server. I think the Wi-Fi is performing a little slower than it was before. Okay, so that's all done. And, oops. Actually, I think it ran into a little bit of a problem. Yeah, well, okay, trust me that it works. But I won't try and debug it now, or mess with what I just did. But anyway, the point is that you can make changes and you can test it locally, and then you can put it on your server, and it all happens within a matter of minutes. If you try to do this stuff locally, this would have taken you, a couple hours just to get your head around how you would actually do this kind of process. So this is actually just the beginning about what we're trying to do with Cloud9. It's kind of a hackerish platform right now. If you know how to do your code and you know how it works locally, this is something that I think will make a lot more sense. But we realize also that some of these things are a little bit more technical than people want, and there's development tools out there that make it much simpler. So we're now trying to transition into a spot where people who are not that used to web development can actually get involved and start doing a lot more complex things.
Database connectivity?
Yeah, so that's something that we're trying to kind of communicate, that you actually don't need anything with Cloud9 itself to do that. You can do that already without us giving you any tooling, because database services already exist on the web. So it's part of this whole service integration thing. Like, we're integrated with the GitHub service, the Bitbucket service, Heroku, Node.JS. There's all these services out there in the cloud, but Cloud9 kind of makes it make sense by being up there with everything else. So we can provide tools, and we will provide tools to allow you to see that data that's in your database. But yeah, you can do that already. So we are working with other companies actually that do database work to kind of promote that idea to other users, that you can, I was working on some example where you can do some really cool stuff with geolocation with MongoDB, and allows you to see like who's around you. So we were going to call it 3Square because it was like a rudimentary Foursquare. I think those guys are here, right? I should talk to them about that. Yeah, it's probably a legal issue there. Okay.
So you're all right.
Yeah, exactly. They weren't here, so I'm in the clear. So again, coming back to this whole thing, it's more about a change in your kind of adapted values of what you've been used to with the development that you've done so far. For people who are used to development the way that it's been done, this analogy is probably too long, but I heard this kind of morbid analogy about a group of monkeys in a room who get sprayed every time one of the monkeys goes up a ladder to try and get a banana. And pretty soon all the monkeys are beating each other up because they don't want anybody to go up the ladder. And then they start bringing in more monkeys, and then the new monkeys start beating each other up too because they don't know why, they're just doing it. So that's the way that we feel about the way that desktop development is. It's just awful, and we want to get people's minds around the idea that, you know, it can be a lot better and a lot more enjoyable if it's in the cloud. Some of the geekier things that we're doing that are coming soon, and actually code completion is already in there. So while you're typing, this is something that Microsoft users have been used to for a long time. It will, you can press key combination, Alt spacebar, and it'll show you, actually I'll show it to you right now. So there's this variable here called REQ, and that's the request. And you can type, you know, space dot dot. And it'll show you some snippets first, so you can do like very common things like a for loop or whatever. But it'll also show you all the different options that you have to, you know, all the different sub variables that are a part of that object. So request.simpleJSON or whatever, hit enter. And with that door open, we're going to be doing some really cool stuff that nobody else is doing with JavaScript, because JavaScript was considered a language that was too new to kind of revamp the IDEs that already exist out there. And so we're really the first IDE to take care of JavaScript in the way that we think it should be. Revisions history, that's something that I wish I had it loaded up on my computer right now. I don't. But it allows you to, with your Git repository or whatever repository, each time you make a change in that repository, you can commit it, so you have a historical version of what you're doing. And that's important because if somebody goes in and messes up what's happening, you can go back and revert to that historical point. So we're allowing you to see a side-by-side comparison of what it is like right now and what it used to be, and you can kind of filter and go back in time and all that stuff. Yeah?
So as far as working with GitHub goes, are you basically running your repository on one of your servers?
Exactly,
and
yeah.
you're doing the commits there and push back after?
Exactly.
That all happens automatically?
It doesn't happen automatically when you save, but yeah, you can do it from the command line just like you would in the terminal. And we're working on a visual representation of that. So you, yeah, there's a command line in the IDE, exactly, down here at the bottom. So you can type in a bunch of commands like, you know, git status, so, you know, nothing to commit, I didn't make any changes or anything like that. But if I did make a change, would show me,
So that's bash command?
oh, you modified server.js, so you can say, you know, I want to commit that, and I added a space or whatever. And then you can push that back to GitHub, or typically you really don't even have to because it just exists on Cloud9 anyway. But yeah, if you wanted to share that code back with people, you could do that, yeah.
Is it bash?
This is just a JavaScript kind of implementation of it. So you can do different commands like ls, you can list all the files that are there and things like that. So yeah, some of the typical commands that you would get from your terminal, yeah.
Do you have any plans on supporting HTTPS in your IDE?
In terms of connecting to Cloud9 directly and things like that, yeah, that's been something that has been brought up once and again. But yeah, that's actually Node.JS, the technology I was talking about that we're built on, is just recently, I think, made that really easy to do. So yeah, it's just a matter of upgrading that component. I think you had a question?
Yeah. So you say your data is stored on Cloud9. Who actually owns your data?
Well, that's a good question. We haven't ever had anybody ask about that in terms of privacy, but you have direct access to it, and we don't try and manipulate it or do anything with it. So, like, you have direct access to the file system, and you can create remote targets and push it wherever you want to, or do whatever you want with it. So, we come from a very, like, bearded hacker kind of culture, even though I don't have a beard, but we're not intent on doing any of that like crazy privacy stuff that, you know, we don't want to interfere with your data or anything like that. Yeah.
Also wanted to ask, what's been your average uptime since you have like your first major release?
Yeah, we probably should have slapped a beta label on our service. I heard a story that Highrise and 37 Signals, the guys that create all those different CRM applications and stuff, they built their application in Ruby when Ruby was kind of first starting. Ruby on Rails was starting to gain popularity, and they were crashing, I heard, I'm not kidding, like 20 times a second, but they were so good at restarting their service that people never noticed that anything was actually ever crashing. So we've had to adapt in the same way, but I won't give you specifics about, we've gotten better, I guess I'll say that, but it's, we're definitely the largest Node.js application out there, and it's been an interesting challenge that nobody else has had to deal with scaling problems and things like that. So one of the things I will emphasize about Node.js, and the reason why it's gaining so much in popularity, is because it allows you to connect tens of thousands of people to whatever you're hosting at one time. And the reason it's able to do that is because there's so little memory being used on the server compared to other platforms, and it does it so well. That's why JavaScript is such a powerful application or powerful programming language, because Node.js depends on JavaScript to do that. And you really couldn't do that with any other platform. Well, you kind of can, but you have to retrofit the language and do all kinds of crazy stuff. So, yeah, we think that Node.js was the right path to go. It was just, there's been some challenges with scaling in ways that they didn't expect.
One more thing.
Yeah.
When you have issues, are they more localized, or like when something goes wrong, it kind of affects everyone?
Yeah, to some extent, sometimes it'll affect somebody if they're in the middle of doing something and the server, like, they'll lose a connection to the server. But what we're actually doing is we're enabling offline support. So if something goes down, if the server happens to go down, or if you're traveling on a train, for instance, and you lose connection, that you can enable the IDE to download all your files locally. And then you can continue working on it as if you would a normal desktop IDE. But it's something you would have to opt into. It's not something we would do automatically. And so yeah, that also turns out to be kind of a difficult problem to handle. But we are in contact with the people who develop the browsers like Firefox and Chrome, and we actually contribute on some level to that. So we have the benefit of being able to see what's coming in the browser space and adapt to that right at the forefront of the technology, because we're lucky in that the developers who use our products are also the people who are early adopters of new technologies. So we get to do the really cool stuff, and people will like be right there with us. Yeah.
You
The site says it's free for open source projects,
Mhm.
and is that just on the honor system, or how do you identify if somebody's a commercial user versus open source?
Well, the idea is that if you want to keep your, so you can actually go to this link right here. That's one of the next points I was going to get to, is you can go and visit public repositories in the same way that you can with GitHub. Our model is entirely based on what GitHub has already set. So with GitHub, you can get a free account. You can create an infinite number of repositories to host your code, and anybody can access that code. But if you want it to be private, you pay some fee, like, I can't remember what it is, $10 or something like that. So we charge $15 if you want to keep private repositories. But what's part of that is actually collaboration. That's something that I'm working on. So while you can access this URL right now, what you'll be able to do in the future is, I don't know if I have it. I don't have it running right now, but yeah, well, anyway. I don't have it running right now, but I'm working on collaboration. So that'll allow you to do chat, room chat, private chats, things like that, be able to see people who are on your list. Collaborative code editing, we've got that in there, so just like Google Docs. And, oh yeah, a really cool feature that we're doing is you can see the community of people. If you, me, and 5 other people were working on a similar project from GitHub or from another code repository, we're actually able to see what the root of that is, like the nucleus of where that project germinated from. So if you had made a copy of that, and I had made a copy of that, and somebody made a copy of yours, we can see where that all came from on GitHub. They allow you to do that. And so in the IDE, you can actually see, oh, there's 600 people who cloned this project, and you get connected to this immense community, and maybe even the creator of the project or something like that, and you can ask him for help. So we're doing some really cool stuff with the community in that way. Yeah?
You said your servers are in Virginia, so I assume you run Amazon?
Yeah, we're with a company called Joyent, who's sponsors the Node.JS development. And so I think you're right. I think they are on Amazon, but I'm not sure. Yeah.
When you were showing that built-in FTP function,
Mm-hmm.
you were using WordPress as an example.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that it's going to work with other content management systems as well, like Joomla, Drupal.
Exactly. Any FTP server, and we've tested a ton of them, and our users have tested thousands of them. You can connect to anyone. I connect to it, and I have this old neighbor who keeps bugging me about a podcast he's doing. He wants me to upload his MP3s to my server. So I do that for him, and it's kind of annoying, but but that's what I do it from. So I'm actually uploading MP3 files through Cloud9, and that's just a regular old server that I connect to. So, yeah. I mean, I don't want to it's not tooting my own horn because my colleague developed the FTP thing, but honestly, that's one of the coolest things. Like, I'm on any computer and I go, oh yeah, I can access my FTP server. And it's pretty amazing.
Is Cloud9 actually sitting in between the two, or you are looking to see FTP from the server?
Yeah, so we figured out that Cloud9 would actually have to sit between the two.
Okay. So does it support SFTP, or is it straight?
I don't know. I'll have to check on that if you want to get back to you on that. I'm sure there were 1,000 other things that I wanted to talk about, but I've completely spaced now. Anybody else have any questions? Yeah.
Is Python working on this thing? I'm
Well,
trying to write a very simple Python script, and I try running it, and I get can't find module, blah, blah, blah.
Some crazy error.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have, in terms of running and debugging, we don't have any other languages yet, but you can do syntax highlighting, as
Okay.
I'm sure you can see, but yeah. Anything else? No? Okay, thanks guys.